I'm going to demonstrate 2 ways to seam crochet with a slip stitch crocheted seam and with a whip stitch sewn seam. For both of them, you'll place your 2 pieces so that the right sides are facing, so the nice sides are in and you're looking at what will be the inside of the work eventually. And for slip stitch, you're going to insert your hook into the V on the edge of one piece and then the corresponding V on the edge of the next piece. Catch the yarn and draw it through both. Then you insert your hook into the next V on the piece closer to you, the next V on the piece in the back, catch the yarn and draw it through, and you continue doing this all the way across. If you're working into chain stitches, I do suggest going into the V of the stitch rather than into the space underneath it, because it'll both be less visible and a little bit stronger. If you have a long seam, it's not a bad idea to pin things together, or for something like these squares, it's easy to line them up so that I have the spaces at the same place. So the way this seam works, you can see it's visible here on the inside, a little bit less so on the other side of the piece. It does create a bit of a ridge, but it's not too large, and it looks nice and smooth and flat on the other side, not even seeing much of the sewing yarn that I'm using to do the slip stitch. It's pretty hidden even though it's a different color. Now, as an alternative to do a whip stitch, I'm going to do this with a different color so you can really see it, I would take my pieces, hold them together, I'm just going to flip this to start from the other corner, and stitch through the V on each side, pulling it through. I'll just leave a little tail to weave in later. Come around and stitch through the next V. So the key here is that you're always going the same direction, so you're stitching around and around the edge. And the other thing is that you want to pull this quite tight, which will make it neater looking and also hide your sewing yarn. Normally I'd suggest doing this with a matching thread, but I want to show you how it looks. And I misspoke, I said matching thread, I meant matching yarn. All my seams for knit and crochet items I do with yarn rather than sewing thread, because it holds a lot better. So here you can see my whip stitch does not have a seam allowance, it's very flat. It's hard to see on this side. When I flip it over to the other side, you can see just little tiny bits, more at the edge here because it's not pulled tight because that's still on my needle, but only small amounts are visible. This is a really nice one if you don't want to have that ridge, but again, pull it quite tight as you're going along.